BMW Motorcycle Owners of America present the Short Wheelbase Podcast. With members in all 50 states, Canada, and across the globe, the BMW MOA invites you to ride inspired. Learn more about membership benefits, including roadside assistance, tire hazard protection, and more at bmwmoa.org. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is also brought to you by Boxer 2 Valve, supplier of quality OEM and aftermarket parts and specialty tools, and by Air Support BMW, offering premium driveline rebuilding and performance enhancements for your air-cooled BMW.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 26 of the Short Wheelbase Podcast. I'm here today with Chuck Pryor. You guys have probably seen him on Wes's podcast already. He's making the rounds with all the podcasts here at the MOA Podcasting, not center. I don't know what the right word is.
World headquarters,
if you will. Welcome, Chuck. Thanks for taking some time today to chat with me.
Thanks, man. It's my privilege. I watch these all the time. I love the content and obviously the audio version as well. So yeah, good to be part of it.
Awesome. So folks, a little background here. You might remember back in episode 7, Darren and I kind of started discussing his quest to find this perfect red R100S. And that quest kind of resulted in a rotating door, if you will, of 100Ss in Darren's garage. And one of them was it was a bike, but it was in pieces. It was in boxes. He got it from California. And a couple episodes went by. We were kind of tracking this along, and along the way, someone reached out to Darren and said, "Hey, I would like to buy that bike in a box." And that someone was Chuck. And so he ended up buying that bike and has restored it. And more on that to come. We're not going to jump into that today because Darren's going to do a full audio podcast to cover that.
Yeah.
But ever since hearing that story, I knew I had to get you on the show. I was fortunate enough to meet you out at the MOA rally, which you so graciously offered assistance when the Green Machine's wheel bearing issue was happening. You offered me transport and just really bent over backwards for me. And I mean, thankfully I didn't end up having to take you up on any of that, but thank you again for that.
Sure.
Like I said, Chuck, you've also been on Wes's podcast. I think it was I have the note here so I don't get it wrong. I think it's episode 68 of the, where is it? Oh
yeah, the 200 miles before breakfast.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find the episode number, and I think it's episode 68. And you and Wes chatted in detail about the R100 GS, the Bumble Beeber, as it's been affectionately named.
Yeah.
So we're also not going to talk about that.
Yeah,
because I don't want to take Wes's content. So
can I throw in one thing about the Beeber
definitely.
bike though, because we weren't able to talk about it on his podcast, and I just want to make sure for your viewers that they know that particular bike is actually, you have a chance to win it, and it is going to be the next vintage raffle bike for the MOA. And since this is an MOA podcast, we got to throw that plug in there.
That. Yeah, thanks. That's a good call out.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, check out Wes's episode of 200 Miles Before Breakfast to get all the details on that bike. It's gorgeous. I saw it in person.
Thank you.
My gosh, that bike is amazing. But today, what I was hoping to talk about is kind of your background in terms of how you got into Airheads. Because if I remember correctly from watching Wes's podcast, you've been riding for a lot longer than you've owned Airheads. And you went from not owning Airheads to not only owning a lot of Airheads, but taking on these big projects like, the GS bike and the R100S that you got from Darren. And a new project that you just picked up, which I'd like to kind of close the conversation with. And that's a first off of the production line, R100RT, which is amazing. I can't wait to hear how you found this thing. But before we jump into that, what got you into Airheads? What brought you into this world and kind of sucked you in as deep as you've gotten?
I know. I went in head first. The funny thing is, I bought my first head only 5 years ago.
Right.
And so, as most people do that love Airheads, there's something about them that just kind of, you get the bug, and I somehow ended up with the bug. My first one was a 94 RT, R100RT. Beautiful bike. And, didn't pay a ton of money for it. It was really well cared for. And I bought it, like I said, just about 5 years ago, right after I moved to Tennessee. And I loved that thing. And it was fun. The first thing I did was hopped on it and rode over to the Ozarks with a buddy of mine and, buzzed around. And it was fantastic. And I only kept it for maybe, I want to say a year, something like that. And as soon as I sold it, it was like my heart got ripped out. I was like, I can't. Why did I do that?
Right.
And
I know that feeling.
From that point on, it's been a little bit maddening to be candid. In fact, in preparation for this conversation, I kind of went through photos and bikes and all this stuff, and just 247 Airheads alone in the last 5 years, I either own or have owned, I think 14.
Okay. I was off by 2 in my count, so I thought you were at a dozen, but you're at 14. Okay.
Yeah, there were two that I actually, when we were talking, there were two that I forgot about. I had an 84 CS, R100 CS last edition, that I no longer own, and I had in that mix was a 95 R100R, the very last year for the Air. That was a gorgeous motorcycle.
Yeah.
But I don't
was
have
that
that
the
one anymore.
was it the classic with the black and white? Yep. Oh,
Yep.
Those are great bikes. I was actually just riding I think last night or maybe 2 nights ago with a guy who had one of those bikes set up with a sidecar on it, and I was just like, oh man, like
They're sweet.
that's such a cool bike, and now you have a sidecar too.
Yeah, they're sweet. That's one I kind of wish I had back, to be honest. But in hindsight, I'm glad I sold it because it led to a friendship that I continue to this day. So the gentleman that bought it from me, an old Airhead guy, he's been around for a long time, retired, and he decided he wanted to have one, and I sold it to him, and so he and I have remained friends. So it's actually, that worked out good, but the bike itself would be one that I wouldn't mind having that one again.
Gotcha. Yep. So let's see here. We got the CS, we got the last edition. On the list here of other ones that you no longer own is the 78S/RS, which I'm assuming you had both fairings for, and that's why the moniker was that way.
No, actually, if there was a short, this was a really, really rare motorcycle. There were two that I wish I had back. I mentioned the R100R, and then this one, a 78S/RS. It's a designated RS that came out in motorsport colors with an S fairing, but by VIN.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
by VIN, and there's mystery on how many of those there were. I took it to Barber last year and had a conversation with Bob from Bob's BMW and a couple of other people that are smarter than me and have been around longer than me in Airheads. And, I've heard numbers, there were, 15 of them only in existence. Bob, I think, said 17, and I've heard as many as 60. And, the numbers are kind of, the rumors, how Airhead rumors can float around.
Totally.
But I had one, and it was very, very nice. And, but I put a for sale sign on it, and a guy wanted it, and so I sold it. And now I'm kind of like, probably shouldn't have done that.
So we're 3 for 3 on ones that you wish you didn't sell. The next one on the list was the 84 RT that was in Burgundy and only had 2,200 miles on it.
Yeah.
How many of those miles were yours if it was
zero? So the story on that one was I called the gentleman about he had an 83 RT that he had listed, and this was actually on Cycle Trader. And we got to talking, and I really liked it. And it was he was the original owner of the bike, and that particular one, the 83, had at the time like 9,100 miles on it. That was it. He parked it, but put it. He owned a vintage, kind of a European vintage car dealership, and his stuff was spotless, and I mean spotless. So anyway, we got to talking about the 83. We worked a deal out on that. In the conversation, he's like, well, my wife has this 90 or 84 RT, and it only has like 2,200 miles on it. I was like, really? And
Wow.
so he sends me all these pictures. And so we worked a 2-for deal, and I ended up buying both of them.
Gotcha.
But I knew I wasn't going to keep both of them. My plan was to buy to keep the burgundy one and to sell the gray one. But a guy offered me money for the burgundy one, and it was like, okay, I'll just sell it. But that
Made
thing
an offer
was,
you couldn't refuse.
it honestly, both of those bikes, I still have the 83. I call it, it's Walter. I still have Walter, and that's a keeper. It's a fantastic bike, and it's pretty darn spotless. But that burgundy one was just gorgeous, and
wow,
literally
Super cool.
2,200 miles on it.
That's amazing. And then you had the 84 RS last edition, and the 94 RT with 48,000.
That was the first bike, the first Airhead.
That was your first
Yeah.
one, the first one. Gotcha. Yep. All right, so that was 6 right there that you no longer own.
I know. I'm kind of embarrassed.
No. See, I like exposing this a little bit. It makes me feel better about my addiction. I'm hoping that it makes some of my listeners feel better about their addictions.
Right.
You probably don't have as many as Chuck, so don't worry.
Oh, gosh.
So the ones that you currently own, a 77S, which is the bike in a box, which you'll go into all kinds of details with Darren on. I've seen pictures, folks. It's stunning. The 78 RS in gold, which again, another stunning bike. These gold bikes are just, man, I feel like
they're pretty.
Everyone I see, I'm just like, I got to buy one of those at some point.
Yeah, they're special.
The 79 RT with original paint and only 12,000 miles on it. The 83 R100 basic. 83 RT with 13,000 and 87 R80 with 42,000, which a few of those you mentioned already. And then
it's 4,200. 4,200.
4,200. That was
very
my
low
mistake.
miles.
Yeah, super low mileage. So you seem to have a knack for finding both rare and low mileage bikes. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Let me pause on the 87 R80 real quick. That was the second. So after I sold the 94 RT, my first one, and I had seller's remorse. That bike is living its best life in Idaho, by the way, with Bill. Bill bought it, and he's loving it, so it's doing great. But I started digging for another one, and that's when I came across this R80 and 87, and it had been parked. Like, the story, They parked it and it sat there forever and ever. And thankfully it was kept in fairly good cosmetic condition with the exception of the tank. But that thing had 2,550 miles on it. And the parents had bought it for their daughter. They gave it to her for a graduation gift. Can you imagine that?
Jeez.
In 1987, your parents buy you a brand new BMW. She rides it for like a year, puts 2,500 miles on her. And then parked it, and it sat there ever since. And
wow!
And now I went through and did I didn't do it personally because I wasn't comfortable doing it. Nathan at Boxerworks went through that bike for me, put an S fairing on it, and I used Williams' video series as kind of inspiration and did that S fairing on it. And now my dad has that bike, and my dad rides it. He's 82.
Wow, that's cool.
And he rides that bike all the time. So that's a special bike. Yeah.
That's super cool. I love that your dad's riding around on it. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So like I said, you have a knack for finding the rare ones and the low mileage ones. Before we jump into the 79 RT, you do have a little bit of a trend here, right? Your late 70s, early 80s in your scope here. Kind of reminds me a lot of Darren. He kind of focuses late 70s as well. So when are you going to get a /5?
I know. It's funny. It's funny you say that because that's sort of been on my list, right? I really wanted to get a nice /5. I was kind of hoping for a 73. As much as I love the toaster tanks, I just like the look of the big tanks.
I like the big tank too.
Yeah, and I thought one of these days I'm gonna get one. Yeah, exactly. That's the one, and I would love it in blue. But I keep finding these bikes. It's like oh man, I gotta add that one. And I've sort of worked my way backwards. If you think about it, not intentionally,
Right.
it's just kind of how it worked, right? My first one was a 94.
Right.
And then I go to an 87, and then my next one is an 83, and then I, start working my way back into the 70s. And what I have found for me personally, and I think Darren probably would say this too, my sweet spot has sort of been after getting the 77 done and the 78 done, that's when I was like, I think I need a 79 RT, just to sort of add to the collection. And so I went on the hunt for one of those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you set me up for the segue here perfectly, but the most recent purchase and now your most recent project is the 79 RT, which, as I alluded to earlier, is serial number 0001.
This is correct.
It is the first RT to roll off the line. And I didn't have my history quite nailed down in my brain. So I Googled this before we got on the phone today. And sure enough, yep, in 1978, this would have been built for a 79 model year. And then they didn't start doing the R80 RTs until 82 and then sold them as 83s. So, I mean, quite literally, this is the first RT fairing to roll off the line, barring any kind of internal nonsense that they were doing with employees and all that. But
yeah,
this is the first bike that you could have purchased with an RT fairing. So that's wild to think about.
I couldn't believe it when it actually showed up, and I had to do some research too, and I found Ian Falloon's book. I think that's how you say his last name, right? I went through his stuff and some other things, and in April of 1978, they built VIN number 619-0001, 2, 3, and 4, and then the rest of the production doesn't start until like September of that year or something like for the 79 model year. So there were 4 of them that apparently were built initially. And I was told by the gentleman that I bought this bike from that it was the first one. And I'll fill you in on the longer story, but from what I was told, this was the one that was sent to the U.S. that made the rounds and went to all the dealers and shows and like, this is our new model. This is our, new lineup for 1979. And it was the very first one. The frame is stamped with the correct VIN number, 619-0001. But after that, it says RS, which I thought was very interesting.
Wow.
But if you think about it, in April of 78, there was no RT, right? So they obviously used an RS fairing. And but the engine is stamped 0001. The frame is stamped on the neck, plus it has the paper tag 001 as well.
Wow. So when you found this bike, did you know going to see it that it was this bike, or was that something you discovered once you got there?
Yeah, I did. I wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't, to be honest, because it was I would say it wasn't in terrible shape, but it wasn't, like you said earlier, I like finding really, kind of original super low mile bikes and, fixing them up. Even if they're cosmetically funky, I like shiny Airheads. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Some people like crusty ones. I like them shiny and clean. But I was looking for the 79, and I found one that was only 12,000 miles. I thought, man, that's really nice. And the price was a little on the higher side, but I talked to the guy and we negotiated, and I got him to the price that I felt was fair for both of us. And so we kind of had a handshake on it. But I keep looking, and then I see this other one, and it was
the mistress.
It didn't have a windshield on it. The mirrors were not on it, and it was smoked red as well, the red smoke color scheme. And I was like, and I was reading the description, and like almost kind of in fine print, it said, "This is the first one," or "This is number one," is what it said.
Right.
And I was like, "This is number one. Like, what does that mean?" Like, so I send the guy a note, and I said, "Hey, I'm just curious what you mean by this is number one." And he sends me a note back and said, "It's VIN number one."
Wow.
And I was like, This is on Facebook Marketplace, by the way.
Right.
Which is crazy.
You never know what you're going to get.
No. And so I'm skeptical. And I said, would you do me a favor? Would you take a photo of the engine? This is where you'll find the number. Take a picture of this, frame and all this stuff. And he does. He sends them back. And sure enough, 0001. And so that's when I'm looking through the book and I'm like, I can't, there's no way I cannot get this bike, even though I'd kind of committed to the other one already. And so I'm like, I said, can we talk? So the guy calls me up. We talk on the phone. And he goes, I'm standing here in front of the bike. Can I put you on FaceTime? I'm like, sure, no problem. So he puts me on FaceTime. And I'm not joking when I say this. When the guy's face pops up on FaceTime, I thought it was Hulk Hogan. And Hulk had just passed away. Like it had just,
oh my goodness.
I am not exaggerating. And he even talked like him. Like he even, hey, what's up, brother? And I'm not even joking. He had handlebar mustache. He had the,
wow.
And I was like, am I in heaven? Like, what happened here? Like, it was just
post-humor.
I know. Hulkster? Is it you?
Wow.
But anyway, so then he goes on to tell me the story, and he was a talker. And
I mean, most Hulk Hogan people are.
If you look like the Hulk Hogan, you need to talk like, and he did. He lived up to it. Great guy though. His name's Bob. Bob's dad bought this bike. Same old story that you've heard 100 times. Dad bought it he didn't buy it brand new. He bought it in 1980, and or 80 or 81, and has had it for all those years. Dad passed away in 99, and Hulk, Bob, he's a motorcycle guy, but he's a Harley guy. In fact, that's the first thing he said to me when he pops up on the screen as looking like the Hulk. He goes, I'm not a BMW guy, I'm a Harley guy. I was like, okay.
That tracks.
It does. It totally did. And but then he told me this story. He said, my dad went into the local this was in Pennsylvania. He said he went into the local BMW dealer in 1979, and they had that bike sitting on the floor, and it was the one that they were sending to all the dealers to show everybody. And he said, but it was like $6,300 in 1979, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but then it was a ton of money.
For sure, yeah.
And his dad really wanted it, but he just couldn't work it out, decides to buy a /6. I think just a standard R90/6, and then goes on his merry way. Well, Dad is an electrician. He goes on this call to this house, and when he shows up at the house, there's a sign in the yard that says motorcycle for sale. And of course, he goes about and does his job, and he said, what about the motorcycle? And the guy said, oh yeah. I said, I bought it brand new. It's really nice, but it's just too big for me, and I don't like it, and blah, blah, blah. Here, it's out in my garage. Walks in, and it's that motorcycle.
Jeez.
It's the 0001
like, what are
motorcycle.
The odds? What are the odds of that? That's
I know. It's just the craziest thing. And I a big part of the love affair for these bikes, for me, I think like a lot of people, is the history and the story.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I'm always going to be talking about Bob that looks like Hulk Hogan, for as long as his motorcycle is in my possession, and probably even after the fact.
Right.
But he said his dad loved that bike, and he rode it a lot. He went to some of the national rallies on it. This bike didn't sit. What I don't know is how many real miles are on it. Bob suggested he thinks there's about 30,000 miles on it, but he said he goes, I wrote it, and the speedometer just or the odometer just rolls over. He said, so I don't have any idea. But looking at it, I would say that looks to be maybe about right, just based on my experience looking at them. But
right.
I don't think it's 130. But I've just got all the body work and everything off, and once I start pulling the cylinders off and really start inspecting things, I'll have a better idea. But either way, the 0001 bike is going to get the full meal deal,
the full treatment. So what does that mean for you, right? Because I mean, a lot of people say rebuild or restore, the full bit. Like, everybody has a different definition of what that kind of work entails. So for you, when you're doing a bike like this and you're going to go all in on it, what do you get into?
Well, for this one in particular, I mean, it'll be a complete frame off restoration because of its provenance. You know what I mean? Like to me, this bike, it's too, like, it was pretty gnarly. You know, I mean, when you look at it up close, it's like, yeah, this bike has definitely been ridden. It has seen better days, but I felt like it just deserves a brand new life and a brand new start.
Yeah.
And it also deserves to be in some kind of museum or something. Like, you could have taken it the way it was and just, you know, parked it in a museum and said, here's number one. I don't know that, you know, I mean, I don't know. Is that something that people love? I don't know.
It's hard to say. Yeah.
But you know, some of the more recent ones, like the 78 RS and the 77S, those bikes were like the 78 RS, the gold bike.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it from the original owner. Same kind of story. He bought it new in 78, parked it in 1983, I think was the tag, from California.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully in a nice climate controlled environment, but unfortunately they covered it up with a old army tarp.
Oh, geez.
And it just really trashed the paint. And I felt like the rest of the bike deserved to get some. The rest of the bike was so nice, including like the engine cases. You know how the cases will just get funky?
Yeah.
The cases looked brand new. Like, they just looked amazing. Some of the nicest ones I've ever seen, actually. And I was like, I just have to paint it. And so I painted it. And I got to give a shout out to my friend Gary, who's my neighbor, lives just down the road, who's an Airhead guy. And he did a lot of the heavy lifting on that, and the 77 too. And he, I mean, literally, that bike got completely disassembled, cleaned, reassembled back, and it runs as good as ever. The 79 RT that we're talking about is going to need a deeper cleaning. I'll just say it that way. and I'll do it just because I think it deserves it. I mean, there's only one number one, and this happens to be it. And not only is it the first of that year, but it's the very first ever. And
right, it's the first RT ever. Right.
There's only one of those. And
exactly.
So, and I've since learned there's some uniquenesses on the 79 and 80 RTs that were changed, some bad engineering and design, specifically the mirrors, the way they mount to the inside of the fairing, because both of the ones that I bought had mirrors broken off. And I'm like, what's the deal? And the way they mount the mirrors, there's like a fiberglass stud boss on the inside, and any pressure on that mirror and it breaks the stud boss. Like, it completely knocks the thing off. So there's some repair going on there, but yeah, I think for me, and that one in particular, it'll get all new everything that looks to be, you know, complete. Like, I haven't checked the cylinders yet, but if the cylinders are bad, I'll either hone them or I'll get new cylinders and pistons and, you know, do all the stuff.
Very cool. So it's going to be a new bike. It's going to have a whole new lease.
The crank will be out of it. The motor will be out of it for sure. And the gearbox will get a refresh, and all that stuff will get changed for sure.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that when it's all done. It's going to look great. Let's see here. Yeah. So we covered how you found this thing. How far away was it? Was this like something you had to go a long ways to get, or was this just in your backyard?
Pennsylvania. Yeah, I did a turn and burn. I jumped in the truck and hooked up the trailer and rode to Pennsylvania, met the guy in a parking lot, and we exchanged stuff, and I loaded it back up and turned right around. So it was a pretty good haul.
Interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned it was purchased there, so it's lived its whole life in Pennsylvania, really.
Never,
aside from riding to rallies and things like that.
Correct.
What part of Pennsylvania?
It was in. I knew you were going to ask me that.
Sorry, I come from there, so I always ask.
Okay. I keep wanting to say Syracuse, but that's not in Pennsylvania. Where was the office filmed at?
Oh, Scranton.
Thank you, Scranton.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
where I met. That's where
All
I met him at. He lived just north of there, but he met me in Scranton. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I grew up about 2 hours from there. So whenever I hear Pennsylvania, I got to find out where in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, from the day it sold new until I brought it back to Tennessee, it's been in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that about covers it on that bike. Do you have any other Airhead projects going at the moment, or is this the main focus?
This right now, this is it. Yeah, this is the main focus. The 77 is done and on the road, and the 78 is done and on the road, and so the timing was kind of good, just from that perspective. And but yeah, I want to give another shout out to my buddy Gary, only because if it weren't for his help. And he has a complete machine shop,
cool.
Bridgeport and lathe and, vapor blaster and, the whole thing, tire changing. And it does all. If it wasn't for him, the 77 would still be in boxes, probably. So I want to give credit where credit's due for sure. But yeah, this one's going to take a while. I've already sent the body work to my painter. And the same guy that painted the Bumble Beeber bike is going to do the paint on this, and he's amazing.
I was going to say, it's in good hands then.
It's in very, very good hands, and so it's gonna get done right with all the correct paint codes and glazurate paint. And again, I'm going to end up spending way more money on it than it's really worth. Just like the GS and so many other Airheads I've done. But this one's kind of special. I just feel like it deserves it. But I went ahead and the other 79 RT, which is also red smoke, I did continue and go ahead and purchase that bike. So I had kind of committed to the guy, and we had a handshake. We hadn't exchanged funds yet.
Yeah.
But I felt, number one, the paint on that is all original, and it's actually really clean. And I had originally thought maybe to take the body work off of that one, put it on the 001 bike. But it's like, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, all the parts from that bike need to stay on that bike, or at least that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Even though it was going to be a repaint. So now I'm going to end up with two 79 RTs, the exact same color, in my garage when it's all said and done.
Well, you have one that you can just park there as a reference as you build the other one back
to be
together.
honest, to be completely candid, I'm actually, my shipper is actually going to drop that bike, the second 79 RT, off at the painter. So he'll have it there for visual reference to make sure that the fade's in the right place, the pinstripes are in the right place. And, there are some uniquenesses in the number one bike too that, later, even in 79 got changed. Like, for example, 78, the lower fairings on the RS had, they were solid. You had to remove the headers in order to get them off. It's a real pain.
Yeah.
This number one bike is the same way, because they only had lowers from, early on. Later in 79, they had the split. They did the split lowers, and then into 80 and the rest of the run, they all had split. So there are some uniquenesses to that particular one. And an interesting story about Bob and his dad. Bob's dad decided at some point in this bike's life that he wanted split lower fairings. So he got his Sawzall out and he split the lower
one way to
fairings
do
it. And so, I mean, when he showed him to me, he's like, yeah, he got tired of, dealing with him. So he just cut them off. Now, to his credit, he did cut them very well. He cut them in the wrong spot, but those are getting repaired, and we're going to go back to the original. So
go back to the solids. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. So it's going to be looking great, back to original. Love it. It's going to be really cool to see that bike all done up. Well, that's really all I have in terms of covering that bike. Like I mentioned, kind of halfway through here, but it's fun diving into someone's collection and kind of getting, that idea of like, my addiction is not as bad as someone else's. So
yeah, well,
and I say addiction in the kindest way possible, of course.
I understand. It is a bug, and I got bit by it for whatever reason. And I just, I love working on them. The GS project was really the first bike I ever really dove into that deep and I did a full, frame off resto on that.
Yeah.
And went over and above in some cases on that particular bike. But I wanted to do it. I wanted to experience it and learn and figure it all out. And it was fun. And so these projects just somehow keep showing up. And I'm just like, okay.
I mean, once you start one, they just kind of keep piling. It's just kind of what it does.
I know.
Before we wrap up here, though, I just want to kind of circle back to, you mentioned the GS and the giveaway. What are the details? When is that happening, and how is that going to work? I don't actually know all of them off the top of my head, so I just want to make sure everybody kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm sure Ted appreciates the mention too. No, the vintage raffle that the MOA does every year, it's in the spring. So the Beeber bike will be the next vintage raffle bike in the spring of 26. I don't know the exact on sale date for the tickets, but obviously if you're an MOA member, you'll get a notification. You'll certainly get some emails, or, it may show up in the magazine or whatever. But that bike, it's actually been on parade a little bit. They had it in Ohio at the Vintage Days in Ohio a few weeks ago. And I just happened to be scrolling Instagram and I saw Tammy Backey from the foundation. She had posted something about it. And so Beeber's making his rounds, showing his pretty face to everybody, and which is great, because that's kind of the whole point, of that particular bike, and why I even approached, the MOA about it in the first place. But yeah, you can, for $25, you can win that motorcycle, and I promise you, you could never buy a motorcycle like that for $25.
Definitely not.
You need a lot more zeros behind that 25 to do that.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I saw that thing at the rally, and it's gorgeous. The Cerakote and again, I don't want to take steam out of Wes's podcast episode by covering all the details, but folks, it's a beautiful bike. If you need to renew your membership or buy tickets, please do when that time comes around, because you will not be disappointed if you win that one. Cool. Well, thanks for diving into your background and the current project, the RT project. I'll hopefully get a chance to maybe post some pictures of that on either the Misfits page or maybe on a future episode of this podcast, so folks can see what that looks like when it's all done. And like I mentioned, Darren, you're going to meet up with Darren in I think a couple weeks from now.
Yeah.
To talk through the S bike, the bike in box.
I'm hoping Darren still has a box or two available, because there's some parts missing. That
Is
I want
there?
to talk to him about. There might be a box in the corner somewhere that you forgot about.
Yeah.
No,
I'll let him know next time I talk to him. Chuck's looking for a box of stuff. Cool. Well, keep an ear out for that one too. That's coming soon on the full length audio podcast. Chuck, is there any way for folks to follow you? I think you have an Instagram page. We've talked on there. So is it cool if I share that in the description for everyone?
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So if you want to follow Chuck's adventures into Airhead adventures and rebuilding and all the projects he's doing, there's also some non-Airhead bikes that he posts too that are equally gorgeous. So if you like non-Airheads, it's another great person to follow. Before we sign off, do you have any last words? Anything you want to pass along before we wrap?
No, nothing really in particular, but yeah, I'd love to connect with Airhead friends and talk Airheads. And obviously you and I met at the rally under unique circumstances when the Green Machine decides to throw a bearing out. Yeah. You got a spare wheel now. So
I do. I'm looking at it right over my monitor. It's sitting right here.
Yeah. But to me, when I think about that particular situation with the Green Machine and my own experience with motorcycling in general, but certainly in Airheads, the best memories are the stories and and when things don't go exactly as planned. And that's part of what I love about, motorcycles in general and travel. And I don't know exactly how many miles I've ridden on a motorcycle, certainly close to 500,000 probably. And, but for me, the things that I remember the most are the difficult times, kind of like life, I suppose. But motorcycles and Airheads in particular, there's just a great connection and a great community, and I love being a part of it. It's fun.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Well, on that note, folks, we'll wrap it up. Like I said, I will throw a link to Chuck's Instagram page in the description. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow, all of that fun stuff. It helps us keep this moving. And until next time, ride safe.
Thanks for joining us on the Short Wheelbase Podcast, presented by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. To join the club, visit bmwmoa.org. You can find full-length episodes of the excerpts heard here on the Airhead 247 podcast. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is produced and edited by Nick Malozzi. Audio segments by Jeff Glover. You can check in with Nick at Airhead Misfits on Instagram.